Mira sat near the foggy window of the community center, her hands resting silently on the cold metal arms of her wheelchair. Every day she came here, hoping the noise of other people would make her feel less alone. But the noise only reminded her of everything she could not reach anymore. People walked past her like she was invisible, like a shadow blending into the walls. They greeted everyone except her, not because they hated her, but because they did not know how to look at a woman whose body no longer worked the way theirs did. Mira had been paralyzed for 12 long years. A road accident at 14 had changed her destiny in one cruel moment. Doctors told her she should be grateful she survived. But she always wondered if survival meant living like glass, fragile, ignored, and always at risk of breaking. Her family stopped treating her like a daughter and started treating her like a responsibility. Some relatives whispered, "No man will ever marry her," others said, "A girl like this can't have a normal life." Mira pretended she did not hear. But every word cut her deeper than the accident itself. People thought her wheelchair was her prison. But the real prison was the way they looked at her, with pity instead of respect. With fear instead of acceptance, she learned to stay quiet, to turn her pain into silence. Silence was safer. Silence did not judge her, but silence also made her heart heavy. Heavy enough that sometimes it felt like breathing was a chore, not a gift. Today the community center was crowded. Mothers laughed together, children ran around, and men talked loudly about work. Mira watched them like a distant viewer watching scenes in a movie she would never be a part of. Then the door opened with a soft creak, and a man walked in holding the hand of a small girl. The girl wore a pink jacket and carried a little stuffed bear with one missing eye. The moment they stepped inside, Mira felt something change in the air. She did not know what it was. But her heart responded before her mind could. The man was not dressed fancy, but his presence felt warm. He had tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen difficult days but refused to break. His name was Ryan, though Mira did not know it yet. Beside him was his 6-year-old daughter, Ella, a girl with bright curiosity shining in her eyes. People in the hall looked at Ryan and whispered quietly, "He's the single father who lost his wife last year. He works day and night, he barely sleeps." Mira heard their whispers, and her heart softened. She understood pain, and she recognized it in others easily. Ryan guided Ella inside. Looking around for an empty place to sit, his eyes passed by everyone until they suddenly met Mira's. For a moment he froze, not because she was in a wheelchair, but because there was something honest and raw in her eyes. Something he had seen once in his own reflection, when life broke him. Ella tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Papa, why is that lady sitting alone?" Ryan followed her gaze and looked at Mira again. This time with more attention, he noticed the loneliness around her like a soft fog she lived inside. He also noticed her hands trembling slightly, not from weakness, but from the effort of holding back emotions too heavy for any one heart. Most people pretend they don't see such things. But Ryan was not like most people. Pain had taught him how to see deeply. He gently smiled at Ella, then said, "Come, let's sit with her." Mira blinked in surprise when they walked toward her. People rarely approached her willingly. Most avoided eye contact, unsure what to say or how to behave. Ryan stood in front of her and gave a small, polite nod. "Hi," he said softly. "Is it okay if we sit here?" Mira swallowed hard. Her voice came out shaky. "Yes, of course." Ella climbed onto the chair beside Mira and beamed a bright smile. "What's your name?" she asked, swinging her legs in excitement. "Myra," she replied, feeling strangely shy. "That's a pretty name," the little girl giggled. Mira felt her heart melt a little. It had been years since anyone said something kind to her without hesitation. Ryan sat across from them, watching the small interaction. He noticed something others didn't. Mira's eyes sparkled for 1 second when Ella spoke, as if the darkness inside her shifted and let a small ray of light in. Just then, a loud metal tray fell to the floor at the far end of the hall. A sudden noise made everyone jump, but Mira. Mira turned her head 1 second before the tray actually fell, as if she sensed it early. As if her body reacted faster than the sound reached her ears, Ryan noticed immediately. His eyes narrowed in quiet curiosity. That was not normal. That was not the reaction of someone who has slow reflexes. especially not someone who had lost movement below the waist. Mira looked away quickly, embarrassed. She had no idea that her strange reflex had been seen. She hid her hands under her scarf, hoping no one noticed her unusual reaction. But Ryan had seen it, and his mind began to race. There was something different about this woman. Something hidden. Something she herself might not understand. Ella continued talking happily, but Ryan's focus stayed on Mira. He felt a strange pull toward her. Not romantic, not yet, but something deep. Something unexplainable, as if their lives were quietly connected by an invisible thread. As if fate had brought them into the same room for a reason they would soon discover. Mira kept her eyes down. She didn't know that her lonely world was about to change. She didn't know that this quiet, humble, single father would soon rewrite her destiny. She didn't know that Ryan was about to become the first person who truly saw her. Not her wheelchair, not her limitations. Not her past, but her. And in that moment, destiny silently shifted. Two broken souls had noticed each other. And their story had just begun. Ryan stayed silent for a moment, watching Mira while pretending to keep Ella entertained. He did not miss the strange way Mira reacted earlier. The way she sensed danger before anyone else. It was fast. Too fast for normal reflexes. And this made Ryan more curious than ever, but he didn't want to scare her. Not yet. Mira kept her eyes down, trying to act normal. But her heart was pounding inside her chest like a drum. She wasn't used to people sitting near her. She wasn't used to gentle voices or warm smiles. And she definitely wasn't used to a man like Ryan looking at her with honest curiosity instead of pity. She wondered if she looked strange, if her wheelchair made him uncomfortable, if Ella felt awkward sitting so close. But every time she glanced at the little girl, Ella smiled back with innocent joy. A smile that healed something small and painful inside Mira. Ryan leaned forward slightly. "So, Mira," he said softly, "do you come here often?" Mira nodded. "Yes. It's quiet here." She didn't mention that it was the only place where she could escape her house without judgment. She didn't mention how her parents rarely spoke to her anymore, unless they needed something. She didn't mention that she came here because she had nowhere else to go. Ella looked at Mira's wheelchair and asked, "Why can't you walk?" Ryan immediately whispered, "Ella, don't ask that." But Mira smiled weakly. "It's okay," she said. "I had an accident long ago." Ella nodded innocently, satisfied with the simple answer. Children never complicate things, Mira thought. Maybe that's why they're easier to be around. Ryan watched the exchange carefully. Despite her shy voice, Mira had a calm way of speaking. A steady tone that made Ella sit quietly, something she rarely did with strangers. Suddenly, a gust of cold air blew through the room. A door on the far side swung open with a bang, even though no one was near it. People turned their heads in surprise, but Mira stiffened. Her eyes widening for a split second, she sensed it again before it happened. Her body reacted to the sudden shift in the room like she was tuned to something invisible. This time, Ryan caught the reaction clearly. Mira's shoulders moved first. Then her eyes shifted, and only then did the door slam. It was impossible to ignore. It was almost like she could feel energy, sound, or danger ahead of time. Ryan leaned in and asked quietly, "Mira, how did you know the door would open?" Mira froze. Her breath caught in her throat like someone had grabbed it. Her fingers tightened on her wheels. Her eyes slowly lifted to meet his. I didn't," she whispered. "It was just coincidence." But Ryan didn't believe that. Not for a second. He didn't push her, though. Ryan had learned from life that people hide the truth for a reason. Maybe they hide pain. Maybe they hide fear. Or maybe they hide something the world would never understand. Ella suddenly jumped. "Papa, I'm hungry," she said. Tugging his arm, Ryan smiled gently. "Okay, sweetheart. Let's get a snack." He stood up. But before leaving, he looked at Mira one last time. "We'll be right back," he said softly. "Please don't go." Mira nodded slowly. But her mind was spinning. Her heart raced with strange fear. Why did he notice her reactions? Why did he care? No one ever cared. Not like this, while they were gone. Mira stared at her trembling hands. She hated this part of herself. This strange ability that made her different not only physically, but in ways she couldn't explain. Since the accident, she sensed things, small vibrations, sudden shifts, danger, noise, before it happened. Doctors told her it was imagination, trauma, nerves, but she knew it wasn't. She knew her body reacted to things others couldn't feel. But she never told anyone, because people already saw her as broken. She didn't want them to think she was crazy too. Minutes later, Ryan returned with a sandwich for Ella and a warm tea for himself. He placed a cup of hot water near Mira, without saying anything. She stared at it, confused. Asterisk. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know," Ryan said, with a small smile. "But you look cold." Her heart softened again. No one ever noticed small things about her. No one cared enough, but this man saw everything. Things she tried to hide from the world, things she tried to hide from herself. Ella sat beside Mira again, happily eating her sandwich. Ryan took a sip of his tea and looked around the hall. People were talking, laughing, living, but Ryan felt something else in the air. Something heavy he couldn't explain. Then it happened. A light fixture on the ceiling began to flicker violently. Small sparks appeared. People didn't notice. Not yet. But Mira's eyes widened instantly. Her whole body tensed. She sensed danger again, before anyone else. "Mira," Ryan whispered. "What's wrong?" She couldn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the ceiling, her hands gripping her wheelchair arms tightly. She whispered, "Move, Ella." Ryan didn't ask questions. He pulled his daughter closer, just as the light above them burst with a sharp crack. Glass shattered, falling like rain. People screamed and ducked, some jumped aside. The hall erupted in panic. But Mira didn't scream, she just breathed out shakily. She knew it before it happened. She felt it in her bones. Ryan looked at her in shock. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice filled with both fear and awe. Mira stared at her trembling hands again, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know. I just feel things." Ryan realized something then. This woman had suffered her whole life, rejected, ignored, underestimated. But she wasn't weak, she wasn't broken. She wasn't ordinary at all. There was something powerful inside her, something the world would soon discover. Something Mira herself had never fully understood, and Ryan. He felt destiny tightening around them both. A silent promise that this meeting was not random, not a mistake, not a coincidence. It was the beginning of something big, something life-changing, something that would rewrite both their destinies. The hall slowly returned to calm, but Mira's heartbeat did not. Her hands shook on the wheels of her chair, and she tried to hide them under her scarf. She wished she could disappear, wished she could pretend nothing happened. But Ryan had seen everything. Not only the accident with the light, but the moment before it happened. He saw the way her eyes moved early, the way her breath changed, the way her body reacted faster than human reflex should allow. Ryan stood beside her now, Ella holding his hand tightly. He kneeled down so he could look Mira directly in the eyes. "Mira, you felt that before anyone else," he whispered. It wasn't an accusation. It was curiosity mixed with fear, mixed with respect, mixed with something else Mira could not name. She turned her face away. "You're mistaken," she said quietly. It was just instinct, but Ryan shook his head slowly. "I don't believe that," he said gently. "Not after watching you twice today." Mira's breath caught. Twice, he noticed, both times she wished he hadn't. She wished she could go back to being invisible. Because invisibility was safer than being questioned. People destroy what they do not understand. And she was terrified of what Ryan might think of her. Ella suddenly spoke in her small, bright voice. "Mira saved us." Those simple words hit Mira harder than any insult she ever heard. Saved us? No one had ever said she saved anything. Most people acted like she was waiting to be saved herself. But now a child, a sweet, innocent child, looked at her like she was something good, something brave, something powerful. Mira forced a small smile to hide the storm inside her. "You're safe," she whispered. "That's all that matters." Ryan's eyes softened. There was no judgment in them, only gratitude. And something like admiration, but admiration scared Mira. It was easier to handle pity than admiration. Admiration created expectations, and expectations created fear. Fear of failing, fear of disappointing, fear of being not enough. People began to clean the broken glass. Voices rose in confusion. Why did the light blow? Is something wrong with the wiring? Could someone have been hurt? Mira wanted to leave. She felt exposed, seen in a way she didn't want to be seen. I should go, she whispered, turning her chair toward the exit. But her wheels stuck on a piece of glass. Her chair jerked to the side and she gasped. Ryan rushed to help, but Myra pulled her hands back sharply. Don't, she whispered. Please. Don't touch the chair. It wasn't anger. It was fear, deep fear. Fear that if someone touched the chair, they might also sense the strange energy she sometimes felt running through her arms. Fear that someone might discover the truth she had buried for years. Ryan stepped back slowly, respecting her space. Mira, you don't have to run from me, he said softly. She kept her eyes down, pushing her chair harder, trying to move away. You don't understand, she whispered. People don't like things they can't explain. Ryan's voice lowered even more. I'm not people, Myra. She paused just for a second. Just enough for her heart to hear the honesty in his voice. It was real, it was gentle, it was safe. But Mira wasn't ready to accept safety. Not yet. Safety was dangerous because it made people vulnerable. And she had been broken enough times to know vulnerability could crush her. Outside, the afternoon sun was setting slowly, spreading orange light across the sidewalk. Mira started rolling her chair toward the bus stop, hoping distance would calm her shaking heart. Ryan followed her quietly. He didn't push, didn't force, didn't raise his voice. He simply walked beside her, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As if being with her was not strange, not uncomfortable, not difficult. Finally, Mira stopped. She looked at him with tired eyes. Why are you following me? She asked in a soft, trembling voice. Ryan took a slow breath before answering. Because you look like someone who has carried everything alone for too long. Her throat tightened. She hated how easily his words reached her heart. She hated how they made her feel seen, understood, accepted. No one helps me, she whispered. People look at me and see a broken person. Ryan shook his head gently. That's not what I see. She swallowed hard. What do you see? She asked quietly. He looked straight into her eyes. I see someone strong, someone brave, and someone hiding something she shouldn't have to hide. Myra's heart stopped for a second. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had called her strong. No one had called her brave. No one had seen her as anything more than a wheelchair. But this man did. A single father with his own scars saw something in her. And that scared her more than anything else. She turned her head away and whispered, You're wrong, but Ryan smiled softly. No, Mira, I'm not. Ella looked up at Mira and suddenly hugged her arm gently. The small warmth of the child's touch made Mira freeze. She felt something inside her crack a little. Something old, something painful, something lonely. Ryan watched the moment quietly. He saw the fear, but he also saw the beginning of trust. A tiny seed of trust, something fragile, something precious, something rare. This woman was not weak. She was a storm trapped inside a quiet body. A silent strength the world had never recognized. But Ryan saw it, and he knew Ella saw it too. He didn't know how yet, but he was sure of one thing. Mira was going to change their lives. And they were going to change hers. Destiny had already begun moving. And nothing would stop it now, ***. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the quiet street as Mira waited at the bus stop. The cool evening breeze brushed against her skin. And for the first time in a long time, she felt her heartbeat slowing. Calming, not because she was alone, but because Ryan and Ella were still there beside her, still standing, still choosing her company, even when she tried pushing them away. Ella was humming softly, swinging her little legs as she sat on the bench. Ryan leaned against a lamppost with his arms crossed, his eyes still watching Mira carefully. But it wasn't the kind of stare that made her uncomfortable. It was a stare filled with quiet concern. With respect, with something warm she could not name. Mira cleared her throat softly. "You really don't have to stay," she said. "The bus will be here soon." Ryan shook his head gently. "We're not in a rush," he replied. "Ella likes you, and I want to make sure you get home safe." Those words made something warm spread through her chest. She was not used to someone caring about her safety. Most people assumed she couldn't get far, couldn't get hurt. But Ryan understood that danger didn't always come from distance. Sometimes it came from loneliness, sometimes from silence, sometimes from a heart that had carried too much for too long. Mira looked down at her hands. They were still trembling. She hated it. Hated how her emotions showed so easily. She wished she could hide it better, but Ryan saw everything. It was as if he saw not just her actions, but the weight behind them. "Mira," Ryan said quietly. "I know you're scared." She looked at him sharply. "I'm not scared," she whispered, but her voice betrayed her. Ryan didn't argue. He simply nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "Then you're tired." That word hit her like a truth she hadn't admitted in years. Tired, not of walking, not of moving. She couldn't walk anyway. She was tired of people, tired of pity, tired of being broken in everyone's eyes. She was tired of pretending she didn't feel things before they happened. Tired of hiding the strange ability she never wanted. Tired of fighting alone. "What do you think I'm hiding?" she asked suddenly, her voice almost a whisper. Ryan stepped closer, the streetlight casting a soft glow on his face. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know you're not ordinary." Mira swallowed hard. Ordinary, the one thing she always wished she could be. Yet here was someone saying she wasn't. And not in a way that insulted her. Not in a way that made her feel small. But in a way that made her feel seen. Before she could reply, a loud horn blared from the road. The bus approached quickly, its brakes screeching slightly as it slowed down. Ella held Ryan's hand and jumped excitedly. "The bus is here," she said happily. Ryan helped Mira move toward the ramp. But again, he kept his hands away from her chair. He knew she didn't like being touched. He respected that. And that respect made Mira's throat tighten again. As the driver lowered the ramp, Ryan spoke softly. "Mira, can we see you again?" She blinked in surprise. "See?" "Me," she repeated, as if the words made no sense. Ryan nodded. "Yes." Ella chimed in with a big smile. "Can we? Mira, please." Mira looked between them slowly. Her heart felt like it was pulled in two directions. Fear on one side. Hope on the other. Hope felt dangerous. Hope meant maybe things could get better. Hope meant she could lose something again. Hope was not safe. But Ryan and Ella were the first people in years who made her feel something other than emptiness. And she couldn't ignore that. "I don't know," she whispered honestly. Ryan smiled gently. "That's okay," he said. "Just think about it." Mira rolled onto the ramp and positioned her chair inside. Ryan stood by the door, watching her as if making sure she had everything she needed. Ella waved excitedly by Mira. Mira tried to respond, but her voice got stuck. Instead, she gave a small smile. Small. Weak, but real. The bus doors closed slowly, and the engine roared to life as it pulled away. Ryan and Ella grew smaller through the glass window. Mira watched them until they disappeared. Until she could no longer see them, but their presence stayed inside her. Like a warm echo she didn't know how to escape from. Or maybe she didn't want to escape at all. The bus ride was long and quiet. Mira stared at her reflection in the window. Her eyes looked tired, but for the first time. There was something else in them. Something small, but undeniable. A spark. A question. A possibility. She remembered the moment with the falling glass. The moment with the slamming door, and years ago, the moment lightning struck a tree near her home, and she sensed it seconds before it hit. She always dismissed these moments as coincidence, but they weren't coincidence. They were signals. Signals she could feel. Signals her body reacted to, signals she never understood. When she reached home, she rolled inside quietly. Her parents barely looked up. Her mother just muttered, "Dinner is in the kitchen." Her father didn't even glance in her direction. But for the first time ever, their coldness did not crush her completely. Because someone else in the world had looked at her differently today, someone saw her. Not her wheelchair. Not her weakness, not her past, but her. She lay awake in bed that night, her mind racing. Why did Ryan stare at her like he recognized something familiar? Why did Ella feel so attached so quickly? Why did Mira sense danger before it happened? Why did she feel connected to them, two strangers she just met? Questions spiraled inside her until sleep finally pulled her in. But even in sleep, she felt something strange. Something shifting, something growing, something waiting like destiny itself was waking up, watching her, preparing her, for a truth she had been running from for years. Asterisk. The next morning, Mira woke with a strange heaviness in her chest. Not the usual heaviness of sadness, not the normal weight of loneliness she carried for years. This was different. This was the feeling of something about to happen. Something she could not explain. Her dreams had been filled with flashes, a falling light, a slamming door, a loud sound before it came, and Ryan's voice calling her name through the darkness. It felt too real, too close, too intense. She rolled out of bed slowly, her hands trembling, her heart beating faster with every passing second. Something in her body felt awake in a new, powerful way. She didn't know why. She didn't know what it meant. But she sensed she could no longer ignore it. At noon, the doorbell rang sharply. Mira froze. Visitors were rare. People didn't come to see someone like her. Her mother opened the door, and her voice softened in surprise. "Oh." "Hello." Mira recognized the familiar voice that answered Ryan. He stood at the entrance with Ella holding a small flower in her hand. "Hi, Mira," he called gently. "May we come in?" Mira felt her heart leap in her chest. She didn't expect to see him again so soon. She didn't expect him to search for her home. She didn't expect him to remember her this deeply. Her mother stepped aside reluctantly, but her eyes showed confusion. Why would a single father search for her daughter? Why would anyone? Ryan walked inside slowly, his presence filling the small room with warmth. Ella rushed toward Mira and placed the little flower in her lap. "This is for you," Ella said proudly. "Because you saved us?" Mira's eyes stung with tears. She tried to blink away. She looked up at Ryan, who stepped closer. "I wanted to talk to you," he said softly. About yesterday, Mira's breath hitched. She already knew this conversation would come. She already feared every word of it. "I don't want you to be afraid," Ryan continued. "I'm not here to judge you." Mira lowered her eyes. "You saw it," she whispered. "You saw what happened." Ryan nodded. "Yes," he said gently. "And I believe you've been hiding something for a long time." Mira swallowed hard. She didn't want to explain the strange sensations. She didn't want to admit she could feel danger before it came. She didn't want to sound crazy. She didn't want Ryan and Ella to leave her like everyone else. "What if I told you," Ryan began slowly, "that you are not alone in this?" Mira looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Ryan took a deep breath. Then he unbuttoned the sleeve of his shirt and rolled it up. On his arm, there was an old scar, shaped like lightning. Bright, sharp, unnatural. "This happened years ago," he said. "I survived a storm that should have killed me after that. I started sensing danger too." Mira's eyes widened. Her hands froze. Her breath shook. "You feel it too?" she whispered in disbelief. Ryan nodded. "That's why I noticed you yesterday," he said softly. "Because I recognized something familiar." The world around Mira began to blur. All her life she thought she was broken. All her life she thought something was wrong with her. All her life she thought she was cursed with strange reactions. But she wasn't cursed. She wasn't broken. She wasn't alone. There was someone else, someone who understood, someone who carried the same weight, someone who saw her not as a burden, but as a reflection of himself. Mira felt tears fall slowly from her eyes. "Not tears of pain, but tears of relief," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one." Ryan stepped closer. He knelt down in front of her, his eyes warm, steady, gentle. "You're not alone anymore, Mira," he said. "I'm here. Ella is here." Ella hugged Mira's arm tightly. "You're strong," Ella said sweetly. "Papa said so." Mira broke into silent tears. Years of loneliness melted slowly under their gentle presence. Her heart cracked open, but this time it wasn't breaking. It was healing. Ryan placed a hand on his chest and spoke softly. You can sense danger, Mira. So can I, but you. You feel it more deeply. Mira trembled. What does that mean? She whispered. Ryan gave a small, emotional smile. It means you were never weak, he said. You were powerful all along. Those words hit her harder than the accident ever did. Years of insults, whispers, judgments, all shattered in one moment. Powerful, not broken, not useless, not abandoned, powerful. Her breathing became uneven as she whispered, Why? Why did you come here? Ryan met her gaze without fear. Because destiny brought us together, he said quietly. Because you're not meant to face this alone, and because I feel something I cannot explain. Mira's heart raced. She feared his next words. But she also wanted them, more than anything. Ryan took her hand gently, not touching the wheelchair. Not touching out of pity, but touching her, just her. Mira, he said softly, I don't see your wheelchair. I don't see your past. I see your strength. I see your courage. I see the woman who saved my daughter, and I see the woman who changed something inside me. Mira's lips parted as she whispered, Why me? Ryan's eyes softened deeply, because destiny chooses those who suffer the most, and because you are not meant to be unloved. Ella looked up and smiled. Papa likes you, she said proudly, and I want you to be in our family. Myra's heart exploded in warmth. Something inside her that was frozen for years finally melted. She felt alive. She felt wanted. She felt chosen for the first time ever. Someone wanted her not despite her paralysis, but because of who she truly was. Ryan whispered gently, Mira, let me walk beside you. Let me help you discover your gift. Let me give you the family you were denied. Her breath trembled. Her heart shook. Her soul felt whole, and with a shaky whisper, she said the words destiny had waited years to hear. I want that, Ryan smiled. Eyes filled with emotion, Ella held her tightly. And in that small room filled with quiet warmth, a paralyzed woman found something she never thought she would have. A family, a destiny, a love chosen not by chance, but by fate and Ryan. The single father who suffered his own storms, finally found someone who understood his secret strength, who understood his quiet pain, who understood his heart. Their lives, once broken and separate, finally fit together like two pieces of the same story. A story destiny had written long ago. A story that had only just begun. The end. Asterisk.